Looking back, as we always do, to last week, it was a tough loss here at home. The first loss we've had in I think almost 2 years. I mean, and it was a difficult loss because as bad as we played in some areas, we still felt like we had a chance to be in the game, and that was the unfortunate part. Was we let it get away from us. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn. As a matter of fact, I think as a team, probably even encouraged. I think Marshall has a really good football team. Their defensive line was really active. They have a really good running back, an experienced offensive line that's been together for a long time. And I think a freshman or a redshirt freshman or sophomore quarterback that I think is going to be really, really good in some of the throws that he made around the field on Saturday night. Very talented football team. I think the thing coming out of it is I don't feel like it was our best shot, and I say that we can play much better than that. And so I think that's one of the driving forces. We are certainly trying to do everything we can to win the West regardless, but would certainly look forward to a rematch with Marshall if we could clean some things up and take care of some things to get ourselves in that position. But it was, I thought a lot of guys on defense played really well. I thought our defense competed against a really good offensive football team. Offensively, unfortunately, three of the first four plays were sacks. Hard to watch in some parts and really exciting in others. And what we've got to do, and where I feel like it was probably a building force for us as an offense or as a football team, is that we were able to come in here and watch the film and see some of the mistakes that we make. I feel like truly with our depth chart and all the changes that have been made in it over the last 5 weeks, I feel like we're really coming to the end of spring practice or fall camp, and I feel like the depth chart is starting to take shape across the board down all 22 spots, where we're really starting to formulate not only a starter but a backup where we have a little bit of depth. And I also think that being able to watch this film, this team is able to see a lot of the mistakes that we made that we can correct, that are correctable mistakes. They weren't physical errors, they're more mental errors and things that we can do a better job of to try and get better. And I think that's the battle cry of this football team right now, is improvement. We've lost to two football teams that are both ranked in the top 20. And as a young team coming in here with 10 new starters on defense and a new quarterback, we knew there were going to be trials and errors early in the season, and hopefully we can learn from them and start to be a little bit more of an experienced team in the second half.
All right, Corey, feel free to go ahead.
Hey, Skip. Wanted to get your thoughts on could this week be the week that we see, Izzy get more and more involved offensively for you guys?
Yes. Everybody's got to be evaluated on production, and there's not a position out on the field that we want to have a quick hook with. We don't want anybody to feel like, wow, I had that one bad play and I'm going to get yanked, whether it's on the offensive line, I gave up a sack, so I'm going to get yanked. I mean, especially when you're dealing with upperclassmen and guys that have been successful like Justin Henderson and Israel Tucker. But it is a production business. It is a production game, and we've got an obligation not only to the starters, but we got an obligation to the backups and to every member of this team to put the guys on the field that are going to give us the best chance to win. And I think if you look at the last couple weeks, I think Izzy has been productive, and we've got to continue to grow and build, and that competition's going to continue with both of them. But I think you'll see Izzy start to play more of a prominent role at the tailback position.
Bo, feel free to go next.
All right, Coach, tell us about UTSA, what you know on both sides of the ball. What do you expect from them?
Really impressed with Jeff Traylor, the job that he's done in that program. I know for the last couple of years, it's almost like it is on a real upswing from where it was the last couple of years. You can see the players playing with energy. They win the first 3 games of the year. Even though they lost the last 3 games, they've lost to BYU, UAB on the road, and Army, who are 3 quality opponents. And they lose them 27-20. They're very competitive with what they do. They're a big football team. They're a physical football team. They run the ball offensively. They have a tailback that's leading the country right now with 700 yards rushing. They have a big offensive line, very similar to what we just played, where they try and control the ball. They've played multiple quarterbacks, but because of injuries, they've lost 2 quarterbacks, I believe, for the season. Or at least 2 that are out right now. And then they're back with Frank Harris, who they began the season with, the quarterback they started with. So I think it's a very talented team offensively. I look at their defense. Their defensive line is certainly the strength, which concerns us a little bit because offensive line is where we've probably had the biggest bumps in the road or the most hurdles to climb with some of the rotating starting positions and who we've had the opportunity to play and who's been available and the production that we've had out of the position. So we've got to get better there, and they're certainly going to be challenged because I think UTSA has a really good defensive line. They're big and they're physical, and so that'll be a challenge for us because I don't care how well your receivers, quarterbacks, or running backs are playing. Your offensive line is involved in the passing game and your offensive line is involved in the running game. And so we've got to shore some things up there and get better. And hopefully having Anton Lewis back this week is certainly going to help us. But very talented team. They've got a kicker who I think has the longest streak in the country of field goals made. Then they have a punter that I think is number 1 in the conference and 4th nationally in yards per game and like 45.6 average per gross punt. So we know it's going to be a challenge playing down there at the Alamo Dome. We've always had dog fights with UTSA. It's always been a hard-fought game. It's always a game that's gone down to the wire. I remember a couple years ago we went down there and had to kick a field goal at the end of the game to win. It's always a dogfight. It's going to be a competitive game, and it's a conference game on the road. I wouldn't expect anything less.
Ben, feel free to go next.
Coach, you mentioned some of the issues that you guys have had up front on the offensive line. Does any of the pressures that you're getting on your quarterback, does some of that fall on the quarterback as well? And how do you adjust to some of those, all the pressure that you're getting on the quarterback?
Well, I think yes. I mean, to your question, yes, the quarterback has something to do with it as well as the offensive line. Everybody thinks, well, we didn't run the ball very well. Our offensive line, we need to block better. We took a lot of sacks. We need to block better. The problem is that some of them fall on it. The interception on the first play falls on the offensive line. The sack on the second and third sack fall on the left guard and the left tackle. But there were sacks later in the game that fall on the quarterback where he could have had the opportunity to slide his feet and get rid of the ball. And so you just have to evaluate it. Some the quarterback has a chance, and on others, when he's getting pressure up the middle, he doesn't have much of a chance to get away from it or to be able to get rid of the ball. So I think when you look at 6 sacks, I think it was about 4-2 in this game. And it's one of the things that the quarterback's got to do a better job of. And again, hopefully that we can continue to get seasoned there. I think both quarterbacks will continue to play with what we're doing. Luke is still the starter, but Aaron is going to play in every single game. And I thought Aaron did a really nice job coming in at the end of the game and taking the drive down the field to put the ball in the end zone. But it can fall on both. It just predicated on the circumstances. But what do we need to do? We need to continue to develop. As I said earlier, I feel like you've got a quarterback that hasn't been through a spring practice or a fall camp. You've got 3 new starters on the offensive line that didn't have the opportunity to go through a fall camp or a spring ball. And so we just have to grow as we go. We have to learn from our mistakes, and we have to improve on it, and we have to get better. And that's all we can do is continue to try and make improvements as a football team as we go through this and continue to compete extremely hard and see if we can find a way to win some games along the way.
Kane, feel free to go next.
Hey Skip, I'm working on a story with CJ Powell and Ezekiel Barnett, two guys that came in as walk-ons in 2016 and who now are both redshirt seniors and starters and on scholarship and key members of your team. Can you just speak about both of those players and how they came in 2016 and were able to earn scholarships and how they have such an impact on this squad now?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look over the last 6 years that we've been here, we've put anywhere from 2 to 4 walk-ons on scholarship a year. I think it's really important that those guys that walk onto the program, once they get to the point where they are playing for you on the field, you got an obligation. You got an obligation to put them on scholarship. They trusted in their own abilities and their own desires to come here and work to get on the field, and you've got to be able to reward that. And I think too many times it's too easy to take those guys for granted that are already in your program as walk-ons and maybe try and go recruit somebody else. But that's something we've tried to do every year. And there's Abe Delphin as a walk-on that's starting for us on the offensive line right now. Boston Scott was a walk-on. I mean, you could go through almost every one of these guys that were walk-ons that ended up creating value to our program that we felt like they were deserving of a scholarship. Well, without a doubt, C.J. Powell, both him and Zeke Barnett have been key contributors. They started with their walk-on, by showing up with their attitude, their ability to work, their desire to improve and get better, what they did in the classroom. They're great students. They're great character young men. They bring value to our program on and off the field, but they certainly bring value as football players. They're passionate, they're competitive, they're tough, and they're two of the young men that not only was their dream to get a scholarship, but one of their dreams was to continue to improve and get better and become starters and play even a bigger role. I've seen a lot of players that get a scholarship that was the end of their goal, and they lose their desire and their drive and their work ethic. That'd be far from the case with these two, as they have both worked their way into starter status, leadership status on this football field, on this football team, and just really proud of what both of them are able to do. They're unselfish players, they're fundamental football players, they're disciplined, but most importantly, they're passionate and they're tough, and that's where they bring so much value to our team.
Corey?
Skip, the conversation amongst the team this week leading up to UTSA in terms of maybe a sense of urgency with you guys getting back over to the western side of Conference USA and then playing another interdivisional opponent. Just how important this game is for your ultimate goals.
I mean, yeah, it's important. As you know, they're all important. I mean, you want to be as good as you can be, but I think right now the biggest focus is our need for improvement. And that's why I said I think as disheartening as the Marshall game was, I think after the players had the opportunity to watch the film on Sunday night, I felt like we went out and had a very spirited practice on Sunday night. I think they realize how good they can be. They realize how close we are. The strides that we've made the last 3 to 4 weeks on defense from where we were, getting a Trey Baldwin back, and he's all over the field and 16 tackles and doing that, but playing fundamentals and playing in the system. And I think they're seeing how when they play as 111th in the system, that we can be a really quality defense and offensive football team. And I think that really showed up in the film. I think there were a lot of good things, a lot of great plays that you could see where everybody does what they're supposed to do. There's nowhere to run. It's a gain of 2 type play. And then the next play, when you play a great back like Knox and one guy gets out of his gap, and all of a sudden there goes the seam, and how trustworthy you have to be to play on this defense. And so I think that there were a lot of positives in this game, and I think, believe it or not, morale-wise, it's actually a booster rather than a deflation, because I think everybody can see just how close we are and where we got to keep getting better. Everything from here out, I think we have one left that's not a conference game. We only play one other team from the East. The rest of them at this team are Western Division teams. And you start talking about UTSA, Rice, North Texas. I mean, you still UAB. You still have a lot of good football teams that are on your schedule that you have to play in your conference. And we just got to take it one at a time. We've got to get better this week. I keep saying if you want to change the present or change the future, you got to focus on the present. And if we want the results we want for the future, the big goals that you talk about, we got to get focused in the present and what we got to do to get better. Because if we don't improve, we're not going to see different results.
Guys have any other questions? All right. Thanks, guys. And thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Coach.